Nextracker, now as the leading tracker manufacturer in the world, has delivered how many gigawatts worth of trackers?
Shipped over 90 gigawatts.
What are you most proud of in the last year?
Taking a company public is so exciting. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Few have had as much impact as Kristan Kirsh. Kristan is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and the Global Marketing Lead for Nextracker, has been for the better part of the last 9 years. I met her when she was fresh to the solar industry and I was just getting kicked out of my last job before Suncast became a thing that became what you are viewing now. She's had the privilege and the opportunity to help establish a leading renewable energy brand around the world, known to most, if not all, of the developers that you and I are familiar with. She's also been key in contributing to Nextracker's ESG efforts, diversity, equity, inclusion, the philanthropy that Nextracker's engaged in, community engagement, and so much more. I've learned a ton from Kristan, and today you will as well. I'm really excited, and it is an honor to welcome her back to Suncast, actually officially as the first time as a one-on-one solo guest. She's joined us numerous times on panels at our Power Up Live stage. Today is going to be fun. Can you take me back to when you first learned of this fledgling solar technology company way down in Fremont, and put me in the room where it happened?
Sure. So I started off in clean tech probably 3 or 4 years prior to that. I was in desalination. A lot of the EPCs and developers with whom Nextracker works with right now were the same. They had their water space. They had their solar and wind verticals. Yeah. So I had this moment. My kids were little, and I had a lovely time to kind of look for a job. And my husband introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Andrew Beebe, who was working at Obvious Ventures, right? Had just started Obvious Ventures, I think, somewhere around that time, 2013, 2014. And Andrew gave me this full list of, oh, you should look at this company and that company and Smart Wires, and they're coming out of Chevron. And it was really exciting because here in the Bay Area is a big cluster, right, of clean technology companies, obviously. Battery technologies, Tesla, you name it.
Did you have any context of Andrew's then role of like how iconic?
No clue. No clue, because he's a contact of my husband's for a long time ago when they were in their early 20s.
Gosh.
Amazing. And so Steve said, oh, you should just go and chat with Andrew. Yeah. So we did. So and funny. He mentioned the very last on the list. He gave me about 10 different companies. And the very last on the list, he said, well, so you want to get into solar?
Yeah.
I had prefaced that. I really wanted to get into solar, and I knew that I could parlay a lot of what I had done in the clean technology sector and desal
for sure
over into the solar space, PV space. So he says, well, there's this really sleepy company, not necessarily a company. There's a really sleepy technology. I'm not so sure about it, but the company is run by a huge list of solar warriors, you should call them, right? People that have been in this sector for 15, 20 years.
Real pioneers.
Slogging it out, right? Yeah. With the first big utility scale plant, I believe, in Nevada, Nellis Air Force Base, and during the Obama years and all this stuff, right? And he says it's down in Fremont. And there is a little bit of a cowboy-ish to the executive team, and you might like him because he knew my personality and he was kind of gauging where I was going. So lo and behold, next day, Dan Sugar gives me a call and says, "Would love to interview you. Come on down." Within the day, we signed the deal.
No way.
And it all happened, I think, probably because I had shown him my portfolio. Yeah. I came in and I showed him what I had done with offices and branding and wrapping around key messages and values and things like that. Yep. And I had also designed a yoga studio in my last job.
He's a bit of a yogi, isn't he?
He is. Some 30 plus years of being in yoga. He took a look at it and he said, "Oh, there's this really great oak tree out in the back of our solar yard. You should go check it out. I've always wanted to do a yoga deck there." So amazing. There kind of sealed the foundation for what came 9 years later. later of just a tremendous amount of scheming and doing some really, really cool projects with the founder.
For those who haven't listened all the way back to Dan's interviews in the I think episode 39 or something like that, or Marco Garcia, which was episode number 2, the Nextracker story is intricately tied to how the Bay Area grew the solar market, and Andrew Beebe worked with Marco in a prior venture as well. So I think it's really fun to hear how Andrew was instrumental in like giving that pivot for you in your career out of desal, which itself is an energy market, into the solar industry. But I remember one of the things that I love, you work with Dan so closely, is that you do a fairly decent Dan impersonation. What was it like when you went through this battery of interviews? Do you remember like him coming to you and like, how did he tell you that you're going to get hired?
Oh, I think after a round of 6 or 7 interviews with the C-suite, at the time we were around 35, 40 employees, and he comes in at the very end of the onslaught of interviews that I had. Back in the day when we interviewed like 8 people for like 8 hours when you go to a company, and I don't think that's done anymore with remote. And he just puts the offer down on the table and he says, "All right, let's get going. You gonna sign?"
So, yeah. It's like more of a hand slap.
Yeah, a little bit of a forcing function.
A power move, yeah.
No, I gravitated to the role, and
did you know you were gonna work so closely for so long? Did you imagine that it would turn into something that was a decade long?
Oh, for sure not.
No.
Oh, absolutely not. No, I when we started, we had the tail end of 2013 is when the company was founded. 2014 is when they gained traction in the Central Valley of California on small DG projects. Right. With like little, dairies and
RAM projects, little 1 megawatters.
1 megawatters. And then a couple of the contracts came, and some of the larger EPCs, well known from Blattner to McCarthy, and then Swinnerton, now Solve Energy. And then SunEd actually gave us our foray into Latin America and the Atacama Desert with Kila Pilun and Javiera Crucero in Chile, and that market was incredible at the time. So
there must have been like, I'm guessing, less than 500 megawatts deployed, but when you started,
easily around 300-400 megawatts.
Nuts.
And then that brought us into being able to look at other markets that we were able to serve from a supply chain standpoint.
Yeah. To brag a little bit, Nextracker, now as the leading tracker manufacturer in the world, has delivered how many gigawatts worth of trackers?
Shipped over 90 gigawatts.
90, coming up on 100. I remember you gave me one of those 50 gigawatt endless summer T-shirts.
That's right.
That was not very long ago.
We did that for a sales and marketing summit.
I feel like that was only a couple of years ago.
It was 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And already
I wrote the first
doubled.
press release in 2016 for 1 gigawatt milestone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and not even really understanding what 1 gigawatt means, and what 1 gigawatt means as a marketer, I have to say, is how do you translate that to the clean technology space of lay people? And that is somewhere around from 198th down to Battery Park, if all of Manhattan, the tip of Manhattan, was covered in solar. So 9 square miles, 10 square miles, you're going to get somewhere roughly, don't quote me on this, but roughly around a gigawatt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, of ground mount.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to spend as much time as we were afforded talking about messaging and how you, through Nextracker and Solve and the many partners, have put together the communication. You've been in the room where it happened all of the last 8+ years, deciding how are we messaging this? How do we get it to the masses? And I think that's fascinating. But for folks that perhaps weren't in the industry in 2015, what sort of solutions were you competing against, or had you identified that were competitors or alternatives? And how did you go about educating yourself, other than the incredibly rich data stream of people inside the company? But how did you educate yourself early on? And then what was the field looking like at that time?
Well, like any marketer, you're going to be doing your discovery phase.
Yeah.
So speaking with all the co-founders, speaking
Yeah.
with the technologists, working with a handful of really great product marketers like Greg Beardsworth, who I work closely with, as well as our yard. We call it our solar yard kind of internally, but it's the Center for Solar Excellence. So in 2015, we set out to really professionalize and bring all of our technologies in one place right next to our building.
Yeah.
Which afforded us car chargers.
Yep.
So car chargers on an entire row of our building are powered by the solar yard. That is now some 700, 600, 700 kilowatts. Maybe even longer, maybe even more now.
Yeah.
So that was a learning ground for anyone coming in.
Yeah.
As well, we created the PowerWorks Installer Training Academy.
Yeah.
For third-party installers, as well as our EPC partners, right? Those who are going into a new project and they have a new crew coming on, they come for a day or two of installer best practices. So all of that for me was like, okay, so hardware, not even software yet. And then with the acquisition of Brightbox Technologies, machine learning company, we were able to add a layer and an offering to developers.
Yeah.
Right? So backing up to your original question, what were some of the kind of incumbent technologies? Well, first off, fixed tilt, right? Gigawatts around the globe, especially in China.
Yeah.
So we had to quantify and show to anyone listening to us why a solar tracker.
Yeah.
I remember being at the first was it All Energy show in Melbourne, which was 2016, I believe. We were there, my buddy Pete Wheel and a bunch of others, just creating that market.
Yeah.
And they had mom and pops. They would open up the entire conference for anyone to come in from the entire anywhere the population of Melbourne. So they would come in. You have these couples that would come in. They say, "Solar tracker, can I put that on my roof?" With 70% of the product being steel. Obviously, it's a ground mount solution. Anyways, so what we needed to do and what I needed to do was understand the production curve. Very, very basic things, right?
Yeah.
From a technology standpoint, we had no product marketing at the time.
Oh, wow.
I came in with, years of thinking and working with engineers that you have white papers, IEEE. So I came in with all these notions of we should do this, we should do that.
Right.
And little by little, the founders and the engineering team understood, okay, yes, we need to kind of build our deck of explainers of why we're bankable.
Yeah.
And that term bankability, right, was, I don't even know if it's used anymore. I mean, we do use it here and there, but bankability in 2015 was a really big deal.
It was a big part of Black & Veatch and D&V's portfolio was validating the bankability of this technology.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, meaning it's not going to break and make the solar plant produce less energy than what is expected in the financial model. Like, is it going to actually perform to spec? Yeah.
But so we did a lot of testing and we wanted to find out what that actually energy gain was. So it's anywhere between, depending on the site conditions, could be 15 to 30% additional energy.
Were you driving those initiatives on the marketing team, or how for those who are also trying to think like, man, Kristan's got so much experience. What can I learn from what she put into place that might help my company? How was marketing involved in developing those creative endeavors?
I mean, I've never really been like super impressed with marketing in the solar space. And I think it's really come a long way.
Yeah.
Like anyone coming into a startup.
Yeah.
You need to be setting up your social channels.
Right.
You need to be setting up your 101, your building blocks. We've talked in the past around key messaging platforms.
Yeah.
What are your brand pillars? I had to figure all that out with the executive team and others on the leadership team to really understand what was important to them.
Right.
So naming, for example, naming NX Horizon.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, this company was not yet knew how to navigate those waters. So I was able to bring that in, but they were able to teach me. So it was a kind of, I was getting a lot of information and drinking from the fire hose on PV, but they were probably drinking from the fire hose.
I bet. You're a tour de force as well.
We need to get a white paper out. We need to get a case study out. And how do you get the case study out? Well, you need a platform. Do you do MailChimp? Are we enterprise? Do we go with HubSpot?
I love it. I can imagine, because anybody who's ever worked with Dan Sugar, and I remember Tara in particular, Tara Doyle, talking about working with Dan and how intense it was in the Powerlight days. Dan is always on, and he's this guy who just never stops thinking, never slows down. And in my experience, that's how you show up in the workforce as well. And like, I can imagine that Dan, when he was hiring you, he was going, all right, I found someone who can keep up, right? Can you give me 5 minutes on a charrette around naming a product, how that's managed, how you gain the internal stakeholder consensus? What does it look like? You've done a tremendous job on multiple fronts. You've brought numerous products to market over the last 9 years. You've had deep experience in how to think about naming. And could you give us just a quick overview of how you think about it and how you train your team to integrate it and get buy-in?
With naming, I love naming projects, by the way. They're some of my favorite
projects.
Yeah. Oh, it's a full-on project.
Yeah.
It's an A to Z endeavor. People are very passionate, especially founders. Mm-hmm. So working with the founders and understanding and educating and finding that that kind of how much do you want to push?
Yeah.
And how much do you really believe that that's going to help the company?
Yeah.
Right? So in naming, I think it was called something like the SPT 100. We're the first self-powered tracker.
There was the self-powered tracker.
Pioneering.
That's so solar.
Oh my God. Right? With a small little mini 36-watt panel or whatever it might have been sitting on the tracker, and that's what would power. Mm-hmm. So no grading and all this good stuff, and learning what the value propositions were around it. Yeah. So going into the naming exercise, having a numerous agencies and freelancers with whom I could just call up and say, hey, what do you think? You want to help us out? So brought on a naming agency.
Oh, really?
Well, so early days through many, many years, we were about 3 marketers on the team. There's different ways you can create naming where you're merging 2 words and it's new. Yeah. Something like, Twitter. Twitter's a name that, word. Yep. X now, but Twitter, or Twilio for the real estate market, or, these are made up names, right? Or you can do a name that is similar to the actual channel that you're selling into.
Okay. What's
like energy recovery.
Right.
Energy recovery is the name of the actual category of the desalination technology that's sold in the market. So they just hung their hat on that name and said, we're going to call it energy recovery.
Right.
For me, in doing that marketing, it was always like, yes, we're the same name as the category.
Right.
You could also come up with something that's aspirational. It's like NX Horizon.
Yeah.
So NX Horizon self-powered tracker, or NX Horizon smart solar tracker, once we added the machine learning element to it, right? As I mentioned to
what was Horizon meant to invoke?
Single axis horizon trackers.
Yeah.
Right? Horizon, as well as aspirational, like looking ahead. We came up with this with one of our agencies, Tor Valenza
Solar.
We came up with this "What's Next" campaign.
Okay.
So early on, bringing in Next, bringing in the capital NX, N-E-X-T, and What's Next, NX Horizon. So anyways, we've had a lot of fun.
Do you remember, what are some of the worst suggestions of names that stand out? Do you remember anything that's like, oh my God, we almost called it that?
I think something like Axios and something around the axle, around of a single
the pivoting,
axis or something like that.
That's funny.
And one of the things that helped us, especially with the USPTO, because when you're going through the naming process, one of the stages towards probably
Glad you bring that up.
3/4 of going into to finalizing the name, where you need buy-in and stakeholder involvement and making sure that those people that are very passionate about it have a say. You have to bring it through the USPTO search.
Yep.
And NX and taking the NX from Nextracker.
Right.
That's what enabled us to get things passed through it. Because if you're choosing any name, how many horizons are there?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Milk, Horizon Milk, or there's probably a 1,000 different
It's a
names
really
like
good
that.
point, actually, around IP, because a lot of folks, myself included, come into business building and even product naming or platform naming with we'll worry about IP if this thing ever takes off kind of thought, right? Where a company like Nextracker is introducing a product that you very much need and hope to take off, right? So I see people will take lightly the idea of naming an IP and making sure you can get trademark around something. And it's something that I've noticed at Nextracker you guys always do really well and early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
What underscores that? I feel like all these things happen because something went wrong at some point, right? In our experience,
it. Right. So there's the intersection of legal and the intersection of engineering, and they always want to name something early on because they need to be calling it something.
That's right. They need to talk to a customer about it.
And internally, they're like, what are we going to call this? So, the engineering team, we always joke around. Alex Howe, our CTO, Jake Morin, head of engineering, they'll say, "Oh, it's just an internal name, Kristan. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry. We're gonna name the project. I know we're gonna do this."
Yeah. Is there something that you experienced that drove home for you the importance of getting that IP locked up early?
I've always just, I guess, over the length of, couple decades of working in marketing and making sure that you use it common law as much as you can.
Yeah.
So putting the trademark on there, common laws is whenever you can. Let's say your construction set drawings or product design at the edge of the tracker, or just put the TM everywhere that you can, and then eventually, and then as soon as you can, get that trademarked with your legal department.
Right. So it's best practice to actually put TM on everything as soon as you start creating.
Yes.
Okay, that's
and
good to know.
you can do it. You don't need anyone to say you can't do that.
Can you
just put
same
the
with
TM.
Copyright?
No. That has to be. Those are all registered trademarks.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So TM you can put on anything.
There's a kind of a phasing in a stage that any legal team would
sure,
be able to advise you.
I'm not asking you to give legal advice,
right?
But you carry a lot of this knowledge that you don't even we don't realize what we don't know to teach. Mike Casey often says this. He's like, I don't know that I didn't think to tell you this thing because it's so naturally ingrained in the process.
Right. Well, you do it so often, right? I liked how we went about naming because we wanted to make it aspirational.
Yeah.
But that also harkens to Tyrone Hardy, Marco Garcia, Alex, the team, Mike Mahowich, the team being very aspirational and walking the walk of being an environmentalist, walking the walk of we are driven to do this because we have an imperative for the climate and the earth.
Right.
So there's that as well. So when you're thinking about naming, you want to make sure that you're gathering everyone's kind of opinions and thoughts, and then you put it into this soup, and hopefully you come out with something that's a win. And sometimes it's not, and that is what it is, and you move on. So
if you think back over the last 8+ years, is there anything that, upon reflection, really had to be true in order for Nextracker to succeed and thrive the way it has?
I think there was a zeitgeist around the 2015, 2016, 2017 era globally where we were able to successfully, along with our competition, to successfully make the claim that solar trackers make more financial sense.
Yeah.
So they penciled out around that time.
They generate more.
And then they shot up.
Yeah,
they
generate more revenue on the site and with less headache.
Our worthy competitors as well had, we kind of grew up in this moment of just hockey stick and growth with utility scale solar. It just made a lot more sense. But then look at now. Okay, so 9 years ago to now, we're installing in hilly terrain, colder climates, hail regions, soils with, as a ground mount for those listening, the ground mount solar is you have a pile that goes under the ground, and there's settlement, there's liquefaction, there's these crazy things in Brazil, for example, called murandu, which are these like catacombs of insects that have since died.
Whoa.
And so you have to understand that there's all this unstable soil. So geotech, really important.
Right. The geotech, I feel like the geotech in the industry really came a long way. Understanding the subsurface conditions when we realized that we were having to, I mean, when I got in the industry, every pile that went in the ground was a pier where you augured a hole. No, you auger a hole, you put a pole in, and you pour concrete around it.
Yes,
all of them.
Yes.
That's how the industry was built.
And there's still a lot of applications like that, from sand and rock and things like that.
Yeah.
So no, it's you think, going back to your question, like what have we seen over the last 8 to 9 years? The changes, you think that a solar tracker is a solar tracker. It's just the wrecking and the mounting.
Yeah.
It's just steel. It's bending steel. There's so much that we have pushed, and the industry has pushed us for better performance, for wind design and engineering, understanding torsional galloping. And so back to your original question, when we had talked about Andrew Beebe and me coming to Nextracker, so at that point, he's saying like this sleepy little technology. Well, guess what? It's not so sleepy.
Yeah.
Like it's exciting. It's super exciting.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome to evangelize the brand, create messaging, create names for a solar tracker.
Yeah.
It's way more interesting than I had ever dreamed. Honestly.
I love that.
No, seriously.
What I have two versions of this question. So, and they're around specific time horizons. What are you most proud of in the last year?
Well, we went public in the last year.
That's right.
So we just celebrated our first
1 year.
1 year anniversary. Leading up to that, I think going into that experience is seminal for any marketer.
Yeah.
Like seminal.
Yeah. Going public in this sector is, and in most, I think, but particularly in the solar industry, it is
done with trepidation.
It is aspirational and a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, done with trepidation. And also, like, most of the marketers leading the brands in our industry have no experience with publicly traded companies because we have been a developing industry. So I would love to hear about how you prepare yourself for the process of going public. One thing I really appreciate is, as close as we become over the years, like, you still are able to hold a lot to the vest, right? And that's what makes you a very valuable asset to the company. You are able to move a lot of things and maintain discipline on a global scale. To go public, it requires a lot of discipline and structure. Can you talk about that experience and what you learned, and even how you surrounded yourself with people to make sure that you got it right, so to speak?
Going public is a group effort. It's collaborative. Every single department's involved, from supply chain to legal to finance and the executive team. And everyone had to work in lockstep and very sequentially and paced. We had the benefit of spinning off from our parent company, Flex, and they really helped us scale the company and go into different markets as a contract manufacturer. And I think that helped. I think the financial performance of the company, the discipline, the accountability, the integrity of the finance team and the entire company. How you take those steps is very, very, very prescriptive.
Right.
From filing SEC documents and 10Ks and knowing what that process is.
Yeah.
I have never taken a company public.
Yeah.
So again, seminal experience. I've worked for publicly traded companies where I had to write scripts for the CEO.
You know what the structure is.
I know what the structure is, and I know the earnings pace and all of that. But taking a company public is so exciting.
Yeah.
So honestly, it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome.
What changed about the way you thought about the team around you? Because you taught me that companies at the scale of Nextracker actually have more than one agency, which blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, you've hired more than one agency at the same time? Tell me about this. Like, I had no idea.
Right.
I mean, I feel naive even saying that, but I had no idea that a company would have more than one agency and that they each have a role. Can you talk about the team you surrounded yourself with?
Right. Well, there's the deal team, right? There's your banks. There are you have to come up with your IPO video or whatever you're going to be using during what we call TTWs or test the waters phase.
Okay.
There's a roadshow phase. Test the waters is when you're initially speaking to those financial analysts and banks to test out your message and see if that is it how it's resonating, and then you tweak as you go along into the roadshow piece, and then you price. Right? Which is super exciting. So it's the phasing of it and understanding and working backwards. Like any marketing project or program, you're going to be working back from a date, like RE+. Okay, so are we going to launch something this year?
Oh, yeah.
We need to think, from September, working back, what do we need to do? Is there a video? Is there a customer testimonial? I think the challenge is making sure that you find out what you need to do with legal, and you need to have a very, very, very strong two-way communication with the legal team and understanding the right
what
steps
you can and can't
to take.
Say.
So from social media and leading up to it, not being able to post because you're in quiet period, and understanding what those pieces are, and then I have to communicate that with the team. And our agencies would say, are you still in a quiet period? And I'm like, we're still in a quiet period. Like, how long does that last? And then the legal team saying, well, after public, you have to wait 45 days before you post again. So, one of the ways that you get information out about a product, for example, is you're pushing it out on social media, and that's one of many, many, many channels, right? And then there's the ABM or account-based marketing, and working with all of your agencies and really understanding what you can and can't talk about even with them. So for me, I'm a chatty person. I love to meet people, the industry and so forth, but having to withhold information and exercise that restraint.
Discipline,
I think I probably buttoned up a lot.
Yeah.
Which was a challenge for me.
Yeah.
So learning how to do that.
Did you have
and finally kind of being in a really good place with that.
Did you have any
now.
mentors or coaches during that period that helped you kind of keep it together?
Megan Cunningham definitely comes to mind. She has become a great colleague. She runs Magnet Media.
Okay.
And they helped us with the Times Square event.
Oh, really? Yep. That's super cool.
Yeah, they're based in New York.
I think that folks underappreciate in the generally as an organization grows, the role that the marketing team has in sales strategy, particularly. And I did not really understand, even when I got a master's in international business, that sales is marketing. I completely overlooked that reality. And I remember thinking I'm not particularly good at marketing. But the reality is I'm really good at sales, which implicitly means I'm good at marketing. And one of the things that I've realized is the ability to engage with the customer, capture feedback, integrate that into a sales strategy is a core element of marketing. As Nextracker has grown, the customer base has grown, obviously, the way that customers engage has grown. How do you think about audience? Because you're responsible for message. How do you think about the audience and how it's evolved over the time you've been at Nextracker? Your customer base today, how it's evolved versus where you began. And then I'm curious, as you unpack that, how do you go about building the processes to gather that intel to circle back with your sales team and really cultivate a customer-focused culture?
With the Nextracker brand, we're often known as walking over glass for our customers, right? Customer centricity is one of our 5 tenets, one of our 5 values.
Okay.
So, for example, at our all hands meetings, which are, if companies have, gatherings with their staff and, building transparency and trust and this and that, so that your staff understands what's going to be happening with the company. And we have this value shout out, and anytime someone is like really has engaged with the customer, that they get props for that.
Yeah.
Right. So it really is a very, very deep, true tenet for us as Nextracker and our brand. And it all dates back to when the company was founded and incorporating technology feedback loops and communication into the product so we can improve the product. Okay. I don't know if does that make sense?
Well, unpack it for me.
Yeah. So if we're engaging with an EPC and we invite them to our office and or we're on a project, and we are listening to them and listening, well, you might want to tweak this. What about if we wanted to do that? This is a challenge that we have. If we're constantly and really, really embedding that information that we've heard from our customers back into, they're the ones that are using it. They're the ones that are installing it. And they have more product information. Just like it's so essential. That's very important, but we've never left that. We've always had a customer-centric orientation to product development and product roadmap. And we have 80% repeat business.
Wow.
Okay.
Retention.
So if you have, and you can look at our customer base as, 50-50, 60-40, US, international.
Okay.
And that's the same in Latin America, same in the Middle East, where the soil is rockier, it's harder, it's more challenging with desert, for example, and sand versus flood plains in Australia. Customers, we listen and we're hearing, and what was their experience with the installation? And then on the performance side, if a developer has flipped it to the owner or the developer's the owner itself, those customers are telling us how things are performing. And we also know how our plants are performing, the systems where our plant technology is located. We know and incorporate that all into the installation and or the actual product itself, as well as the performance of it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
How do you become a listening organization? Because a lot of folks are, and this isn't to criticize. This is true in all different verticals. But folks they're shouting or talking organizations. They're pushing message out rather than really putting practices in place that receive information and that integrate that information. The hardest part is, in my opinion, the interface with customers is most often the sales team, not as often the engineering team. Yet that information has to come back to the engineering team. It has to come back to the product marketing team so that the feedback loop is perfected to improve the deck, to improve the message, to improve the potential deficits found in the field, in the product. What are the mechanisms that the marketing team can employ to achieve that?
At first, I want to mention that our founding members have, like I said, 20, 25 years, 30 years of experience, right? So all of those relationships that they came to Nextracker with are still some of those same relationships. So it's relationship based. There's trust, right? And now taking and working together with our customers, I always tell my team, make friendships, build rapport, find your island people.
What does that mean? Find your island.
At our customers, the marketing teams of those customers, we need to get to know them as much as our sales team is getting to know their counterparts on the BD side of those customer companies, right? So you're building those relationships, finding what they need, and incorporating and kind of sandwiching what we need and building that together. From what I mean, you could talk about case study development or testimonial videos. Those are all really important and needed. But building that foundation as well, a trust from marketer to marketer, is super important. And I think that, in addition to a couple of kind of tactics that we use to get to know our customers and spend time with them, going to meet them and meet them where they are at, and or meeting them on sites around the globe. This is a common practice for our sales team, is just meeting customers on a regular basis and really hearing them out, and building technology advancements can come by just listening, as you're saying. Like, how do you build a listening organization?
How often are you as the marketing team engaging with the sales team in that intentional, like, I'm going to call it extractive manner, but with the purpose of learning from them what they need in the field? Is it, I imagine that it's a regular ongoing practice, and you're so busy in it that now it's just a part of like your muscle memory. But I want to ask you to sort of back out at 30,000 feet and observe what's happening that allows your marketing team to really be engaged with not just the customer marketing teams, but your internal marketing team, with your sales guys that are bringing that, and ladies that are bringing that feedback back.
They're on the front lines and meeting with them every day.
Sure.
I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not in touch with one of the senior leaderships, of sales, and understanding like, hey, what's going on here? I heard on that call. I mean, is there something that I can do with my team, and maybe in Brazil, and maybe in Europe, or what's going on over there? No, it's essential, but there's always that friction, right? There's always the friction between sales and marketing. And you need to constantly overcome that and break through that and work through that, because you're one team. The only way to move forward is to work together with your sales team. I would feel very ashamed and not good about my marketing practice if I was not on a consistent basis speaking to members of the sales team. We're there to serve the sales and make sure that they can hit their targets and make sure that we can move the company forward. So really getting to know them in every way you possibly can. But back to the customer, I would also say, so you could be speaking to the business development person that you're trying to sell to. But if you're also talking to the head of marketing at that same company, they might have a very different perspective on what they think that company needs.
On what you're trying to solve.
Not that they're not aligned with their business development team. That's not that. But what they're trying to achieve from a messaging standpoint, and what they really, really need for like a developer, for example. One of my close colleagues at a large European developer asked recently, hey, can you guys show up at one of our town halls? Because we need to get permitting passed, and we need to get some farmers to understand that trackers are not loud.
Oh, yeah.
The community does not like that the trackers are loud, but the community has never heard a tracker before.
Sure.
So it's moving every 5 minutes, right? It's going across 120-degree rotational angle, right, or arc of the sun. And every single 5 minutes, it goes, That's all this person needed.
Wow.
That's all she needed to move forward at this town hall so that the community would be okay.
Wow.
So a salesperson at that company might not have told me that.
That's right.
But there's also the lens of the marketer, right, at your customer.
Yeah.
It's really, really
That's a really important triangle.
Is that it's a silly thing, right? It's a little sound file that moved the needle for this customer.
Sound file? That's actually really...
It was a sound file. I called up a project manager. I said, hey,
go to the field.
The next time that, can you take 10 minutes of recording time on your phone? Shoot me the sound file. They're at the town hall right now, and they need to know
No way.
if they want to understand, and so they played it on loudspeaker
That's
so
awesome.
that the community could hear that it's really quiet.
It's such a great tangible example, though. I love that you call up and you're like, "Hey, they're at the town. I just need you to record this." A sound file is a simple solution to that.
Yeah.
So originally we talked about when you started Nextracker, one of the key problems that you had to solve was folks trying to do the financial justification of a tracker versus a fixed tilt. Similarly, what challenges are you and the sales team experiencing now as the industry has evolved?
Challenges that we're finding right now that have also led to advancements in the technology, I think, are rolling terrain, different types of terrain, different latitudes. We've also experienced global supply chain meltdown.
Yeah.
Everyone and their mother has talked about what happened during 2020, 2021, and pivoting for us at Nextracker, where looking at our supply chain, diversifying our supply chain, and understanding how we can make those moves, particularly in the U.S.
Right.
And then with the advent of the Inflation Reduction Act, that is also helping to bring further investment into manufacturing,
Domestic
job creation, domestic supply chain, local content,
Yep.
and those themes. So that was a super exciting moment, but we didn't know how we were going to get through that.
Right.
I, as a marketer, I was just kind of watching from the sidelines, kind of wondering what's going on. How are we going to tell this story? Dan had a brilliant kind of gathering of the supply chain folks. My wonderful colleague Eve Figueroa overhauled our supply chain in the U.S.
Yeah.
So we were able to overcome that, but the messaging resonated with customers. Going back to customer messaging, of if they can be able to have a certain amount of domestic content in the product, they're going to be benefiting from it too, right? With 45X and incentives and so forth.
Yeah.
Same is happening in India
Oh, wow.
with the Make in India program, right? Same is happening in Australia.
And
Same
it
is
had been
happening
for years in
in Brazil
Yeah.
with Finami. I mean, you have to have Finami certification in order to even be able and to get Finami certification in Brazil. For those who are not familiar with that program, you have to have a certain amount of domestic content product that is made, components that are made in country to be able to get financing.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of important.
So this is a certain wave that's a challenge that we certainly overcome, and it's continuing.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to hear, especially in the election year, right?
Yeah.
What's going to be happening with Inflation Reduction Act? I don't know if people know, but we actually did quite well under Trump.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of so depending on how this all plays out in November.
Because it turns out renewables are as much a red state benefit as a blue state benefit.
Texas surpassing California, for example, in installed capacity.
Look at the manufacturing taking place in places like Georgia and Atlanta, or Georgia and Alabama.
No, for sure. Speaking of, so in the Southeast, where you have rolling hills coming off the Appalachians, right?
Yep.
Okay. So another challenge, and something that I had alluded to, is being able to understand and listen to customers and understand what their challenges are. For example, with developers trying to site projects and get projects permitted that might have rolling terrain. So about in 2018 is actually when we started working on the development of, thanks to our customer Solve Energy, that we partnered closely with and collaborated on this technology called NX Horizon XTR. XTR standing for extreme terrain.
Right.
And extreme terrain being able to follow the contours of the land, which allows you to have less steel involved depending on the project.
And less grading.
And less grading up to 100%. Okay?
Yeah.
Which has multiple benefits. And messaging all of that and telling that story was absolutely so fun to do as a marketer. Okay? Because there's puns, there's rolling terrain, there's extreme, and following the natural, the land, like I said, contours. Also understanding Native First Nations and Indigenous communities and what they need, and driving their land, which is coming more and more onto, whether it's U.S., could happen in Canada, it's happening in Australia.
Yeah.
And the Native communities are saying, well, this is our land and we can benefit from solar on it, but you can't grade because it's protected.
Yeah.
Right?
Sacred.
So it is, absolutely. So listening to them, which is another, going to your other question about personas and audiences. So we have developers, we have EPCs as customers, we have investors now as a new audience. We also have the farming community.
Yeah,
we have the indigenous community, which are kind of secondary and tertiary customers, if you will.
That's right.
And or people that can amplify something that benefited them through the utility scale solar development.
That's right.
So as a marketer, listening to all of those voices and incorporating and creating that story, much like we did in Australia, on a plant that is providing all of the city of Melbourne with their clean drinking water, but was on a First Nation property, which was a requirement by the EPC to not grade the land.
Wow.
So all of that created this, groundswell of demand for the XTR product.
Wow.
So now we're seeing it worldwide, which is really exciting.
That is exciting.
Challenges, opportunities, doors open, doors close, and looking for those kind of different ways that we can offer our customers, the best performing product, I guess, from an installation standpoint as well as performance.
It's Women's History Month here in the United States, and you've been an example for many in the industry of what it looks like to take on increasing levels of leadership, but also to champion the diversity and equity that we desire in the industry. So as we round out the conversation, I'd love to hear, I think that if I asked the question I was going to ask earlier, what are you most proud of over the last 5 years or more? It would have something to do with this. You and I both share in common being Peace Corps volunteers. Can you talk a bit about the role of diversity, equity, justice, inclusion, philanthropy, community engagement as a core piece of your job at Nextracker, not as the nice, not as the fluffy stuff around the edges, right? Like, since you took this job, ESG has become a term. It's something that Wall Street cares about, right? But it's not something that you or Nextracker began because Wall Street named it ESG. So I wanted to just finish with your thoughts around diversifying the workforce and the work that you guys have done at Nextracker, because you've heralded and elevated the voices of some tremendous females in the organization at Nextracker that are doing traditionally male or gender roles, if you will. So there's a lot underneath that, and I know that you could probably talk for an hour on that alone. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to just speak to how you've seen our industry evolve and the role, the work that you guys have done that has been, in my view, instrumental in helping foster that environment for the rest of the organizations that want to follow.
Thank you. It's near and dear to my heart. I think it's near and dear to the heart of the executive leadership team. Yeah. A lot of them have foundations. Some of them give a lot. So it kind of matches my own personal being in Peace Corps and being in service of others and working in that thread for a long time. My first career was actually in international development.
Yeah.
You mentioned Peace Corps. I did a lot of work in Latin America, in healthcare, and that's always been a part of me and the core. So matching that up with a whole team and a whole company that has that as a value is really important. But you touched on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. A more diverse workplace simply makes for a better decision and a better outcome. There's research after study on this topic, so I don't need to go into that. I think that we're all understanding that that's a more diverse workplace.
It just is.
Is a richer environment to make decisions and create products and go to market. Being a founding member, Nextracker was a founding member of Renewables Forward. Started with a bunch of companies that came together, member companies, to what can we do to encourage the career paths and foment growth with a diverse workplace, knowing that it'll be a richer workplace, and that will be longer and more thriving over time. And that has always been important to us. The senior leadership has always been in favor of the things that we can do within reason to invest in our community, whether it's where we serve or markets where we serve, as well as within our own communities. And bringing, training has always been an interesting pillar for us to explore. We have our PowerWorks installer training program, but that also allowed us to bring people in with our Center for Solar Excellence. We have one here in Northern California. We also have another Center for Solar Excellence in Brazil. We're exploring opportunities there to bring the community in to educate on the value of solar and within the clean economy, where young people and or people mid-careers can play in enriching that workforce. Right. So from giving more voice to women through organizations like RISE, Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, our Half the Sun Scholarship that I spearheaded a few years back with Solar Energy International, giving women a place where they can lead, they can learn how to present. Like Lisa Ann's initiative over the last 13 years, to give women a platform to be speaking in clean tech, not angry and not frustrated and not complaining, but actually exalting those women that are doing amazing things from a technology standpoint or a leadership standpoint or a business standpoint. What else? It's been a big passion. You have to do it thoughtfully. And I've been privileged and honored to be able to kind of spearhead some of those initiatives. And now we're in a different place, and maybe we'll do a foundation, or maybe we'll have. It's been random. So to be honest with you,
sporadic.
It's been sporadic and random as a startup. And then you come to a different place 10 years later. Who do you want to be now? Right? So one of the things that we did, going back to our conversation around sales, so I worked with Jonathan Eastwood on our sales team, and we were experiencing challenges during COVID. And we'd always given our customers gifts and just a thank you, a token of our appreciation for their trust and collaboration over the past year. And we were frustrated with the getting packages of things, branded things to them in different places around the world, and customers having to go to FedEx and during COVID and having to pay to pick up their gift. And it's just a silly kind of, it's almost like a no-brainer. Because the evolution of a brand, you can actually give back to your community in the name of your customers and say, we're at a different place in our brand now.
That's so cool.
Which is an exciting place to be, and I feel like a more grown up place to be.
Yeah, it's like gifting experiences.
So I'm kind of enjoying that place right now.
Yeah.
So we're selective, but the impact has to be very meaningful and results oriented for sure.
You did something that I think was very meaningful beyond. You introduced me to our friend Andrea Johnson, other RPCV.
Green Empowerment.
With Green Empowerment.
Yeah.
How did that come about? How'd that resonate within Nextracker, the work that you did with Green Empowerment?
Right. So So Green Empowerment is an organization that creates clean energy projects at a very, very small scale throughout Africa and Latin America, and potentially other expanding areas that I might not know about. Andrew can chime in in the comments below. So Andrew was also a Peace Corps volunteer. So her board member, Adrian, is
Adrian Pierce.
Yes, Adrian Pierce of New Sun Road. So she introduced me because I called her up. She's a friend, and she said, "Oh, you should talk to Andrea. She's a great person to get to know."
Were you looking for an organization that you could partner with?
Yeah, so we changed over from giving gifts to our customers at the end of the year to now giving corporate gifts to nonprofits that are doing meaningful work in solar. Yeah. Bringing solar to communities, bringing solar training, bringing income generation projects within those smaller communities that you and I know well, that Adrian knows well, and Andrea through having lived in those communities in Africa and Latin America and so forth. And that it's actually coming from the community itself. Right. So we did this project to bring a microgrid to a level 3 healthcare center on the border of Uganda, or on the border of Rwanda, on the Uganda side. Yep. And there's lots of community partners involved, and that's Andrea working together with those communities so that they can. There's operations and maintenance. Then they work with the community itself. They know how to install. And then there's the medicine. I think it was Medical Teams International that was also involved. So now these community health centers have 24/7 power, renewable power. Yeah. And the communities themselves also know how to maintain the systems.
That's super cool.
So you're not doing what we know, as we've seen time and time again at these international development projects, where they're just left, where the cinder blocks are raised up to here because they ran out of money and they couldn't continue to construct a health clinic, for example, because they ran out of money and there was no one overseeing that, and it wasn't coming from the community itself. Yeah. So Andrea's done an incredible job, and the whole entire team at Green Empowerment. So that was a very meaningful project, and hopefully that community will be able to reap the benefits of solar power, from years to come. So,
well, I hope that people are able to reap the benefits of this interview for years to come. And I wish that I had another hour with you, but we have a day to continue and complete. I do want to ask one final. I hope maybe it's a final question that. I haven't prepped you for, but I think that you likely have some consideration around. I believe that we need more hands in the oars for good messaging in this industry. Nextracker is world-class in that category. Storytelling is a critical component to how you guys have built your brand. And there are folks out there that are trying to decide where they want to take the next career move. Why do you believe that clean energy is the clear winner, the clear choice for any smart marketer out there that is looking for a career pivot?
Well, not only is it lowest cost of energy to produce, as we know this, right, through the LCOE studies done by Lazard and any of these research institutes, we understand that there's a huge growth trajectory of the industry. Yeah. The imperative is also driving that. When I say the imperative, meaning that our planet is on fire and we need to do something about it. There's meaningful work out there, solar, wind, renewables, clean energy, battery technology, EVs, mobility, the whole entire ecosystem of the clean energy economy affords a very, very long and fruitful career path for many people that want to do meaningful work and also, dare I say, be a pioneer in their own right.
Right.
Because it is a relatively new industry. So
it's still early enough.
Chart your own path and put a stake in the ground and do some cool things. The industry is very familial. Any person in the industry will recognize how friendly and how meaningful and impactful people want to be engaging in this space. So
it's still very convivial in that way. It does still feel like a family. It's a very large family now.
Yeah,
thankfully.
100%.
Yeah, but it is probably 1,000% since we've joined the family.
Right. So I encourage anyone to look into the field, and there's so many other things that they can be doing that are ancillary to the sector.
Yeah.
But there's a very, very, very long trajectory for anyone wanting to come into the clean economy.
Yeah, and we still are getting just into the fringes and starting to unpack things around data science and applications like with
AI.
ML and AI.
Yeah.
I mean, it's way more than your traditional blocking and tackling marketing roles, from product development and engineering to integrating data science. I think that's it's an untapped opportunity from a job perspective, and I'm really bullish on the clean energy sector as a job growth anchor for not just our economy here in the United States, but globally around the world. I hope that folks will continue to follow along in your journey and see you as, I have these unwitting mentors, folks that have mentored me that don't even know they're my mentor. And I believe that, I think we've probably both been that for others. And for folks who are just now discovering what a wonderful opportunity is to learn through at least the web of information that you have left through your career. If they wanted to reach out in some way, or if they wanted to follow you, if they wanted to connect with you, what are the best ways they could do that?
LinkedIn is a great place for B2B marketers. So
are you like active? Some people aren't active in their DMs in LinkedIn. So if someone like messages you on LinkedIn,
a little obsessive. So.
You are
full
inbox
disclosure.
zero.
So no, social's really important, but LinkedIn is definitely where people can find me, and happy to entertain any questions around mentoring or just a quick question.
And if there were one video series or video product that you've created in the last period of time that you would want us to link to in the description that is emblematic of the kind of storytelling that is Nextracker, what should we link to?
One that's near and dear to my heart that people should check out is our Gold to Sun program.
Gold to Sun.
We have it in Spanish and Portuguese.
Sweet.
It's storytelling around the impact, the benefits of solar on communities in the state of Minas Gerais, which has the gigawatts in the 8 to 10, even more gigawatts of installed base in that one state in Brazil.
Cool.
And we were able to speak with small shop owners, to a woman who owned a little business in the back of her house, who created this catering business, who serviced the installer crews of 500 people on a given solar power plant. And we did that with our customers and the industry. So bringing in and elevating the industry and telling that story was really just an incredible experience to go through with my colleague down in Brazil, and we have an office there. We went and did a 2-week photo shoot and collected the stories with our customers of the people that are operating the plants, of the communities, and how those communities have seriously changed and benefited from utility scale solar programs.
Love it. I'm always learning from you, and I know that will never change, and hopefully will never slow
you too,
down.
Buddy.
Yeah.
You
thank
too.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for coming to my living room. Here, little coffee break. Thanks, buddy.
I'm stoked that you have stuck around all the way to the end. You are my favorite kind of listener, viewer. all the way to the end. I hope that it means that you've been enraptured by the conversation, but at least it means that you can't reach the skip or the pause or the stop button because you're doing something else, and you've had us in the background while you are also being productive in other ways. However it is that you've consumed this conversation, I really genuinely hope that it has contributed to the improving of your own journey, your career path, something that bolts on to how you see the world, that helps you navigate it in a different way because of this conversation. And if that is true, I would beg you to please go to LinkedIn, thank Kristan for the contribution to the canon of Suncast conversations that we've had. Let her know the special way that she's touched your life. And if all of that continues to be true, please subscribe to our show. We've got more than 675 such conversations in the Suncast canon. You can find them right in the podcast player that you are enjoying this very moment. If you're watching us on YouTube, I have but one request. Please like this video. And if you want to do more than that, you can subscribe to our channel. We've got tons of other content right here to help you on your clean energy journey. And if you're not on YouTube, then please rate and review this show. That's the other way that you can help us reach more folks just like you, smart, inquisitive, on the front lines of the clean energy transition, helping carry the next generation forward in a way that really creates a legacy in our careers, and something that we're proud of. I'm certainly proud of this conversation with Kristan. Glad we finally were able to get it out to you. I want to thank our sponsors who help make this show free each and every week. The only thing you've got to pay is your attention. They cover the rest. They shoulder the burden to help ensure that we can bring these cameras and lights and crew to places like Oakland, California, and capture these conversations in person. It's no small feat. Believe me, it takes a lot of effort. Thank you to our sponsors for showing up in that way. If you want to learn more about them, you can do so at mysuncast.com/sponsor. I would be super grateful that you let them know that you heard about them here on the show. And if you are wondering how you could get your message out to the thousands of solar warriors and climate champions each and every week, twice a week, just like they do, well, at mysuncast.com/sponsor, we've got a link for that as well. Remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.